Okay, it is 7 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Melissa, if you would call the roll.
Yes. Kathleen Aberzisi.
Here.
Jason Cipriano.
Here?
Caitlin Parnell.
Here.
James Sweeney.
Here.
And I see Madam Chair is absent for this meeting. And Pinkerton Academy Student Liaison, Emma Johnston. Okay. And also seated at the board table is Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Roxanne Wilson.
Great. Emma, you want to lead us in the pledge?
Yeah.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Board members will see before them, we've got some meeting minutes from November 13th. So I'll look for a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Wilson, did you want to say anything about the regular meeting minutes?
I did. I have an amendment
Okay.
for, just to spell out what FLES is. For anyone in the future looking back at these, understanding that it's foreign language in an elementary school. So if we could
Okay.
just write that out.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, that's no problem. Any other changes, corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, do we have any public comments?
None tonight.
Okay, so let's move on to current business. Universal design for learning.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm here this evening to give an update on the UDL grants that we received both at HCS and HMS. And before I get into providing updates and progress, I thought I'd just give a quick summary of UDL for our listeners. UDL stands for Universal Design for Learning, and it's a proactive educational framework for designing classroom instruction. And it's based on three primary principles. The first one is providing multiple means of engagement for all the students. The next one is multiple means of presentation, so presenting information to students in more than one format. And the last one is multiple means of expression and action, and that provides multiple ways for students to interact with content and demonstrate what they know. So it's really looking at the variability of all students within a given class and ensuring that we're going to be able to meet the needs of all kids. So with that said, I'll move on to the updates. So HMS received their grant to participate in UDL in March of 2018. And the UDL members include Lori Lynn Griffin, Carolyn Davis, Lisa Babcock, Sangeeta Sood, Maria Denola, Doris Bucco, and myself. And the components that we've already covered, starting in March 29th of 2018, we attended the kickoff event in Concord, which was really to get all the participants together and talk about where we're going to go and kind of reflect on where we're at within our own districts and our goals. June 6th, we had a UDL specialist attend the HMS staff meeting, and she presented a PowerPoint presentation on UDL so that all the staff within the school building understand what it is. And it's not a thing, it's a philosophy and guiding principles to consider when you're designing your instruction. October 4th, the UDL team attended a network meeting in Manchester, and the group met afterwards to reflect on the learning that occurred that day for each of us. We attended different workshops. October 12th of this fall, the team met and decided to focus on the learning strand of UDL ideas in practice. We had 4 strands that we could choose from, and that was what we went with. And then November 9th, we met for an hour and a half to view the first UDL module. There's several modules that we can view at our own pace. And then coming up on December 7th, we're going to have a UDL coach visit the classrooms of those who are on the UDL team, because we're trying to incorporate some of these principles within our instruction. And then this September, HCS applied for the grant and was awarded, the grant will now be participating as well. So I think it's fabulous that we have the whole district focusing on UDL. And the team for HCS includes Sarah Wisecarver, Heather Burkett, Maggie Daly, Kerry Powers, Michelle Carberry, Elizabeth Barlow, formerly Elizabeth Hiltz, Tara Lynn Cheney, and Doris Bucco. And in October, the team of 8 attended their first UDL conference. Next, they decided on their learning strand, and they chose analyzing videos of classroom practice. And those are videos that CAST, which is the acronym, I'll give you the acronym. I have it on here.
Center for
Thank you.
Applied Special Technology.
Thank you. I usually know what is CAST. But their website is tremendous. They have incredible resources. They have videos of different classrooms that are incorporating it so that people can learn from videos that they have posted. So that's something that they will be doing. They also have books that will be arriving. Well, I guess they arrived already. Tuesday before Thanksgiving, they received their books, and they'll be distributed November 28th, and they're going to read several different books all about UDL, and then they'll share out their learnings within the group. And December 18th, they have a UDL meeting scheduled. January 7th, the UDL coach will visit classrooms of those on the UDL team. And I'd like to just mention that our UDL coach is the same person for both buildings, which I think is great, so she can see how we're all progressing and whatnot. And then lastly, at HCS, the UDL team is in the process of reviewing the second module of their learning strand, and they'll be discussing that at a December meeting. So that pretty much concludes where we are currently. I know for both teams at HCS and HMS, we have, many more meetings that we'll be putting into our schedules. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions from members?
So this, the UDL is already being implemented with lesson plans in the classroom?
I would say probably not. I wouldn't say that as a global statement that everybody is. HMS is a little bit ahead because we were awarded the grant last year.
Right.
I think those that are participating on the team, I think within their own instruction, they are exploring how to implement and incorporate some of these components. And at HMS, I know that these are pieces that are part of a discussion, when we have our PLC meetings, because it's all about student learning. So I know that we're moving slowly, but we are, looking at how we can incorporate it.
Okay.
So
All right.
the ultimate goal, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
All right.
Okay. Dr. Wilson?
Additionally, I've also noticed that when I sign off approval for courses or for professional development training for staff, I'm noticing that they're picking UDL-type courses to understand it, and it's not just the team that you have there.
Yep, thank you
So
for bringing that up, 'cause-
conversations are kind of
Yes.
breeding this excitement.
That's right. So that was very exciting to hear. There were a couple of teachers that I am aware of that decided to take a UDL course over the summer. So I thought that was fabulous.
You mentioned the coach a couple of times. Who is the coach?
Her name is, I have it in here, Melissa Sanja. So she's from,
Grant.
she works with CAST.
Yeah. Okay, just wondering. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Awesome. Okay, thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much.
All right, budget discussion.
Jeff, I was going to suggest maybe parking over here.
Can I be over here with the chair?
Yeah, no problem.
He has to spread out a little bit, so it might
Yep.
be helpful.
Slightly less clumsy.
just pass me over. Got one for her? Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
You have in front of you a copy of a revised budget based on the discussion that we had at the last meeting and the direction that this board has provided to the business office and to the superintendent's office. You'll see a budget currently proposed at a second draft of $27,801,130. This represents a 3.5% increase over the previous year's budget of $26,860,997. It also represents a reduction over the previous draft budget to bring us down to that 3.5% level. Major factors I've listed on the first page in front of you. You'll see tuition. We received the official tuition rates from Pinkerton Academy, both for regular education and special education, so that line reflects a $484,000 increase, but that includes the true-up that we've recently done for tuitions. Salaries, net, $311,052. Employee insurance, $202,378. Professional services, $96,537. School resource officers, $74,898. Retirement increases, $71,347. Repair and maintenance, $65,755. Going to the other end, reductions on the higher end, books and info resources. This is consistent with what had been presented last time, $103,763. Obviously, our capital reserve contribution, $125,000 is not in place, and a reduction in equipment. The second page that you have speaks more to those cuts in this particular draft, in this second draft of the budget. You'll see personnel and benefits of $576,000, so that's a cut of $576,059. Facilities, $538,000, and I'll go through these in a little more detail. Technology, $57,500. Individual cuts at the schools, HMS and HCS, $34,120 and $10,939 respectively. Transportation, $50,000, and miscellaneous cuts in special education and professional development. You'll see certain increases in the budget, including FLES curriculum development and supplies, which I believe you had voted on at the last meeting. Special ed add-in of $29,000, special ed tuition true-up of $11,092, and Pinkerton regular education tuition true-up of $66,000. So we have cuts of $1,275,156 and additions or adds of $131,592. So I would imagine that there'll be a couple questions involving personnel and benefits, and that number being $576,000. I will let Dr. Wilson speak to those. I will cover facilities, however, and what we removed was essentially the parking lot repaving at the middle school. We had that budgeted at $525,000. I've removed $500,000 for that and left $25,000 in that capital account in the event that we should need it. We've also cut back on the classroom upgrades at the middle school, essentially cut back on 1 to 2 classrooms for flooring and ceilings and that sort of thing. And quite frankly, we're hoping that we'll be able to do favorably in a bid process, and perhaps we'll be able to make those up as well. Technology, $57,500 reduction. Dr. Dancy was able to put off some wireless software and instead opt for some updated licensing on the current software that he has. HMS was able to defer some cafeteria table requests that they had had for $28,000, representing a large portion of that cut. Transportation, that's a $50,000 cut is based on our spend, based on our trend, and that's quite close, but I think that's a number that will work based on where we're at, what we're seeing from first student from our providers. Obviously, the increases down below I've been able to explain previously. Personnel and benefits, so that represents the entire line, and some of those savings come from removal of the positions that have been proposed as part of the first budget proposal, along with the associated FICA benefits, retirement. And we've also removed, or I'll let Dr. Wilson speak to, some potential attrition that we may have as well. So, do you have any comments on the $576,000 personnel and benefits?
Oh,
1 second.
Sure.
So I know you just went over a couple of things like facilities, but are we going to have a chance to? Oh, there you are.
Yeah.
I thought I saw you
Yeah,
come
we'll
in.
have a chance to talk
Okay.
about this.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Real quick, you didn't specify what was cut from HCS. Is that the library upgrades?
Do you have my glasses on?
Library furniture and one striker chair.
That's it, thank you.
And the striker chair was a safety piece. We bought one this year, right? For the HCS, one striker chair? And
We'll have enough money in this year's budget to get both.
to get both, okay.
Right.
But it's mostly the library upgrades at HCS?
Delayed. We'll just delay it a year.
Okay.
The other,
Go ahead.
I was
Melissa.
just going to notice you that the Pinkerton rates, if you haven't heard, the operational budget, the whole budget went up 1.7%. But because they've had a reduction in the number of students who they're projecting to come through their doors next year, their tuition rates have gone up to around 6%, 5.9% for regular tuition. We had put in 5% in our budget. I know other districts only put in 4%. So we had to add money in order to have enough money in our budget for next year. They also, in their special ed tuition, great variability there. And we're going to have a meeting tomorrow with the headmaster to find out what some of these cuts what some of these increases are. But the variability in the resource program, where a majority of our kids attend, went up 10.39% or something like that, at least 10%. Another program went up 2.5%, and another program was actually reduced. But because of that, we had to adjust all of our numbers up, which is why you'll see some special education, what you call the true up, in order for that to occur. So we had to make sure that when we were cutting, we had to add those things in. So there were some things that we did add in. In terms of personnel, we put pretty much everything that we put in and asked for, we've taken out. So the librarian's out, the math intervention teacher is out. The data specialist secretary is out. Those were some of the things that we had asked, some of the new things. We also had a vacant position, and we decided not to carry that. I think we had 2 vacant positions that we've carried. And so we're not carrying those anymore. We really don't have a lot of league room if something with enrollment increases next year. We also have we had part-time staff who we were going to think of moving to full-time. We took that out, so we're not moving them to full-time. We also had we've got some people retiring. We don't know what they will be. There's always attrition when it comes time to retiring, but we don't know those numbers. We always look at that by the time the budgets are set, and we know what plans people are making. So there's always going to be some of that within a budget. If you need any more personal information regarding some of these plans and personnel, I'd be glad to talk to you more in non-public.
Can you just speak to the 2 vacant positions that you're no longer carrying? I know we have 2 special education positions that are vacant currently.
Well, we had 1 vacant position that was at the elementary school, and that was from last year. So it just carried forward. And sometimes we keep that just in case the kindergarten rates or the first grade rates are really high. And we also had a regular ed para at HMS, which is the reading specialist. We had 2 reading specialists that we held this year, where we put 1 in the budget, and we're going to take 1 and not hire for that. So that's one of those vacant positions. So we're still, there's no intention to reduce the number of teachers that we have, and because we've looked at our numbers, but we always adjust it when we find out what's actually occurring in the spring.
And the math the math specialist or the math intervention position, was that for the central school?
Yes. That was one of the new positions that we had asked for.
So what won't be met because that teacher won't be here, the math position?
Well, it's...
What won't we get to do? Or what
It's
won't the kids
what
have?
what we currently have, which is we don't have a math intervention specialist other than we use Title I as a tutor. You know, we do some tutoring with students with using Title I funds, so that will continue. But we really haven't had this position before, so that's why we wanted to come and just designate this person for math. So we won't have some of the individual RTI type of activities that go along with some kids who might be struggling in math.
So out of these positions, what would you rate your top position that you think the schools need, this district needs? Or top 2? Or 3, whatever you want to say.
Well, I would defer to the principals, but I think it's the positions that touch kids. So I would think the interventionist, and I would think also the librarian.
Are we at a loss for not having a math interventionist? We could talk about numbers, but I didn't join the school board to talk about numbers. I joined the school board about the
numbers.
kids.
I'm just to tell you a little bit of history of what's going on. Patty Segru was she was partially funded under regular education funds and partially funded under Title I funds, and she served as more of our de facto math teacher. She was not qualified to be a math specialist. Our vision is that we have a math coach that will work directly with teaching staff to improve our math strategies and also be an interventionist. That's pretty much what a reading specialist does now. She will coach teachers on, English language arts, yet she will also work directly with students. By not having a math specialist, we can fill in the piece on the student side, which is to take care of the Title I. We're fortunate that we have a very highly trained staff, and especially with all the work we've done with the new math program over the last 3 years. Are we taking care of the kids? Yes. I would say to you, my number one priority, if you want to ask my personal opinion, is getting the library thing in place where we've been talking for a number of years, because we have one person covering 2 schools as a professional staff member supported by 2 paraeducator people, which they're very good at what they do, but they don't have all the professional credentials, so we're stretching that one person probably a bit more than should be done. This goes back to a recommendation from the community a number of years ago. I think it preceded almost every member of this board, and we've every year been putting this gradually into the budget. That proposal says we're basically 2 years behind on that recommendation from, I don't know, when was it, Doris? 2011? Sound about right? So that would impact both schools. That would improve library services for the entire schools. So teachings and students, so teachers and students. So, my opinion.
Thank you. Maria? I agree. Oh, okay.
If I had to pick, I would absolutely support that. The work of our library media specialists is not the librarian of our generation. They are in there coaching the kids on best research practices. They're working with the classrooms every day. Our library is a classroom, and it has evolved into just another teacher in the building and this teacher is teaching teachers on best practices of how our kids are out there gathering information, what is valid, which is reliable sources of information that's going to support them in their work in high school and further on. But that position that Diane Connors is doing, she is back and forth in a frenzied state, and she has just made a great impact on our school and our teaching staff. So that would be mine.
Okay, thank you.
What is the bottom line number for a library media specialist? Do we know that?
I'm sorry?
The bottom line number for a library media specialist?
Are you asking if we put that back, what does it do
Right, how
to these
much?
numbers?
88,000.
That's salary and benefits, right?
Yeah, that's
Salary and benefits.
fully loaded.
Yeah, right. I would hope that you would give me that number, thank you.
So, just to recap something here, so because I don't want it to get lost, right? So we were at 7.76, and we found that the board felt like that wasn't going to be acceptable to bring to the taxpayers, and come back and we've revised it, and we're down to 3.5. That's even taking into account, and it's one of our largest expenses. The tuition at Pinkerton, if I understand correctly, is, as you said, is up 6%.
That's right.
And if I understood the discussion that was had last night with Pinkerton, they offered no assurance that that trend wouldn't continue. Either way, they didn't say that it would, they didn't say that it wouldn't.
No guarantee.
They were asked specifically, if I understand correctly, and I apologize because I wasn't at the meeting, so I heard this secondhand, but they were asked specifically if they could give any assurance that next year we wouldn't see a similar 6%, and they said they couldn't, or they wouldn't give that assurance.
It's a year-by-year decision.
The other thing I was going to say on that is, the other thing I was going to say is, we have this discussion annually with our, the business offices we're constructing the budget, and I tend to advise to be conservative with regard to their budget, and I think it serves us in situations like this, where even with a conservative number, conservative increase, we still saw it's still even more than what we anticipated. So now we got to find that money from elsewhere in order to bring down the overall budget increase to a number that we find more acceptable. So I just it's worth pointing out. So Mr. Gary, this situation with the paving at the middle school, what's the practical impact of deferring this another year? It's the single largest thing that we looked at cutting out of this year's budget. What's the impact?
I think we could get by another year, and I believe we left $25,000 in there to do spot repairs or anything to get us through that 1 year.
Does this become more expensive next year because we put it off another year?
I think like any construction project, whether it's building a building, renovating a building, or site work, you will see gradual increases, percentage increases every year.
Okay.
But, when we were looking at the different projects and you're comparing classrooms and HVAC to the parking lot, and the classrooms are going to win every single time because they're student-facing, right? So, hope that answers the question.
Yep. Any other questions from members?
The classroom stuff that you're going to put off, can you talk about that?
The reduction was, we were coming up with a 10 classroom a year plan. This would reduce it down to, I believe, 8 classrooms. But we're hoping that with, a favorable bid process, maybe we can get that price down and still be able to afford it. Keep in mind that we did do 1 classroom this year already. So we would, realistically, be comfortable doing 9 next year.
What dollar amount is that versus the parking lot? Off the classroom.
Taking off the classroom, I believe was 24,000 in that range. Taking off 2 classrooms, that's ceilings and flooring.
So we talked about the ceilings and fire break and all that.
Yep.
So it's not just a ceiling, it's a safety device.
Correct. This year we were able to replace 3 classroom ceilings, so we'd still be on schedule by taking those off for next year.
So we did 3 early, and with favorable pricing, we may still be able to get another 10 out of what is remaining in the budget.
That's correct, because I base that pricing on a per classroom.
But it would be
that
like
was the most
7.
updated pricing, but if we're doing 8, I imagine that the pricing will be a little better because we're bulk purchasing.
Right.
Okay.
So, does anybody else have any new questions? I have a hang-up.
Okay, go ahead.
This is what I was trying to articulate last week or last meeting, but was really unsuccessfully able to do that. And with the tuition increase in Pinkerton and trying to keep a modest tax increase, a conservative budget, with something like the library and media specialist, which has been put off for several years now, or even the library furniture, which I think we've been talking about for 3 years, but possibly longer. I just don't understand why we're starting the FLES at this point in time when there are other things. And how much really is the percentage to add the 88,000 back in to get the library media specialist position established? How much would that percentage be on a budget of this size? You know, they're looking at like, what, 0.03? And that's just a complete guess. And like the library furniture, I think was $8,000. I think, was it about $8,000 that you needed for library furniture? Like around that? I think that was the original, from the workshop night, I think that was your original figure. Guesstimate. All right.
We had 59, 39, almost 6,000 for library furniture.
6,000 for library furniture?
Which is the same number we took out.
Well, for HCS, yeah, it says 10,900 was the total deduction from the HCS. And I realized that when the budget got trimmed down, HCS took lesser of a hit, but I believe that it had a lesser budget to begin with. And a lot of this is just going off of memory. I don't have all the figures in front of me.
Kathleen, if my math serves me, and Jeff, please verify, but so we're at a 3.5% increase. If we put the librarian back in, that would be 3.82. We go from 3.5 to 3.82.
So it's 0.3, not 0.03?
Yeah, if my calculations are correct. So
I think it's 0.03.
oh, you know what? I could be.
And it is 0.03?
So it would be 3.5 to 3.53.
It's $6,000 for the library furniture equipment, but I think we have much more important things to put into the budget than put that back in, because we're okay at the library.
Okay.
I think the conversation about a future construction, we can address that probably just as well.
What is it, Jeff? You know,
in the future.
it is what?
Sorry, 0.03%. So your 3.5 would go to 3.53%.
Okay, yeah, so I was off a decimal place. So, thank you.
3.53% would be the total budget increase from last year if we added the library specialist back in. I mean, do we want to put this off yet another year if it's already been potentially 7 years that it's been getting put off?
I agree with you. I think we've deferred that one for a while, and I've watched Mrs. Connors, do everything that she can to try to run back and forth. I've seen her run back and forth.
And
between
she's doing an incredible job. I mean, it's an incredible service that she's providing. So if we were able to get another person with her knowledge base in our schools, then our students and our staff would just benefit that much more.
Yeah.
I mean,
I also don't like the idea that, because I still view our library as a critical piece of our schools, I don't like the idea that it's either or. Like when she's in one building, that means there's not a librarian in the other. You're without. And I don't mean to say that there's no staff. Okay, so I don't want someone to suggest that that's what I'm saying. But having the librarian there, it's a binary situation right now. She's either there or not there because she's splitting her time. So That's been a concern to me as well, because there are services, as we've heard, there are services that she provides that when she's in the other building, she's not providing them because she's not in the building, so.
And it's not like the days with the card catalog and the microfiche. I mean, they have the internet, and they really do need to know how to search, how to tell if they're getting information from a viable source.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. I mean, I think the role itself has changed, has evolved over time. There's a lot more that we expect from the role. You're spot on in terms of helping I know they do a lot of work, and we've heard it here before in presentations in terms of evaluating the sources of information so that they can sift through the junk that's out there on the internet and make sure that they're, to the extent that we can help the kids, validate the sources of information and things like that. I think that's just one piece. She's been working on the maker space. Now, granted, we lost some of the maker space because we had to make room for classes and the other things happened, but you're right. I mean, there's a lot more to it. It's not, that position has definitely evolved over time.
Oh, I was sold 10 minutes ago. I'm all in.
So are we talking about the library furniture or the librarian? The librarian
The person.
Sorry?
The person. The
88,000.
media specialist.
And you're right. Then
Person.
it would be 3.8, right?
Okay.
3.8% increase.
It is 3.8.
Yeah,
I was right.
you were right.
0.38
I don't
would be
feel good
0.8.
about that because I liked the.
I liked
0.03
.03 better. That was a much easier
Yeah, that
decision,
one
but
was
even
easier for
still.
me.
Doesn't change anything for me.
I think it's still important. I think we're still under 4%. Not that I'm happy about that we're getting this high, this close to 4%.
The thing is that we deliver more valuable education through people and manpower than we do through any other means.
It's another classroom. It was just discussed.
I do have a concern
Go ahead.
about edging towards 4 with what we're trying to do in other places. And I'm even hesitant to say that because we've had discussions that we've tried to keep the budget down in the past to try to get other things through. That's just where I'm torn. I think it's an incredibly valuable position. And I'm leaning more towards yes than no, but
Yeah.
it's making me nervous.
I think it's reasonable. I mean, your concern, I think, is shared by several other members, myself included, but you're right. And I've said it here before. We have deferred on so many of these things year after year, and we've done it for a good reason. Our intentions were good, but the practical impact of that is we have done without, and we're suffering. And how long are we going to continue to defer? I'm still not happy that we're going to defer on the paving, although I understand it because it's such an incredible cost. It's just that that's not going anywhere. We are kicking the can down the road, and a future board is going to have to make a decision on that because it's going to get to a point where it's unserviceable, and that's really going to force the board's hand at that point. I think we're in a tight spot right now that the Pinkerton tuition doesn't help. That situation doesn't help. But on this one, I support this, and I think we've just deferred this for so long that we're at a point where we can't anymore.
Let me just ask, is it viable to, would anybody even look for the job if we did a part-time library media specialist person, had them mornings or something?
I think it would be difficult. I think they're hard enough to find as it is now.
Yeah.
And if people are looking for positions, they're looking for positions full-time and with benefits.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the other thing is that, every year we have attrition. We have people who leave, and every time someone leaves, we take that as an opportunity to look at what our resources are. And is that position still needed? Depending upon where they are, it's always, we do have money in attrition. We won't know any of that.
Right, we usually start getting the retirement notices around March, don't we?
Yeah.
February
March?
1st.
February, okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, could we put it back in at a lesser amount of funding? Could we
Put
do
what
it that
back
way? Instead of the 88,000, could we fund it at a lesser amount just to keep that position in? I mean, we could
Well, I
always
think
make-
that's pretty much funded at Masters 6 something, Masters 4.
Well, I mean, you know, should anybody that's making a high salary retire and we
know,
cover.
Don't forget that we have the retirement health contingency as well. So when we do gain some attrition, typically we're not really gaining all
All
of
of
that.
it, because we're doing benefits.
That's right.
So this isn't a voting situation here at this point. We're still giving direction in terms of this, but let's see if we can get a sense in terms of how we want to direct Jeff and Roxanne to evaluate this. It seems like the sentiment of the board at this point, at least, is to revise this budget again and include that library position. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah.
And again, this isn't the final anything at this point. This is just, we're trying to get close to that, but this isn't the final version. So Jeff, you got that?
I've got it.
Okay.
And we're still waiting on bids for next year's oil prices too, is that right? Is it next year's oil prices? How far in advance do we do that? I think he stepped out.
We've received the bids in, and we had exceptionally favorable pricing last year.
Yes.
Due to a futures contract that fell through that we were able to take advantage of through the vendor. This year our oil prices came in about 60% higher than where they were last year.
So
Now, fortunately, when Mr. Stokinger was here, you would always hear him, well, maybe not so much, but you might hear him say, I can't predict what prices are going to be this winter. How can I predict what they're going to be next winter or the winter after? So there had always been enough to cover that sort of contingency. So we're probably okay the way we are, but I don't know that it's not looking very good this year in terms of cost savings. And therefore, it's not looking good next year.
Any other changes to this version of the budget that we want to discuss or make at this point? And again, we'll have another opportunity.
So, just so I'm clear, are you looking for 3.5?
I'm not wed to that number. It's just easier to swallow than 3.8.
Right, okay.
So
Because I think,
I think if you're able to go back and my litmus has always been, and I've said this in meetings before, is I don't want to compromise educational quality. Like that's my concern is at what point do the cuts compromise education? I understand that the driveway is a necessary thing, but I don't necessarily directly connect that to educational quality, right? Quality of people's cars and wear and tear and things like that notwithstanding. But you understand, like that's just me. And I'm not speaking for the full board on that, but that's sort of how I look at it are these cuts going to be detrimental to the quality of education that we're providing to our students? And it's not that we say, it's not that we reject them if they are, it's just that I think we just got to take a really hard look and really, really understand those more than some of the what I would consider superficial ones. So,
I think that as Dr. Wilson spoke to, we do have attrition, and when attrition comes up, it's not so much we have the cost savings in from someone retiring to someone coming in. At that point, we're looking at what is that position doing, and is that best serving the district? And so I would urge you to consider that if a library media specialist is a position that is a high priority, if you don't feel that it's going to fit comfortably into the budget, is it something that remains a high priority, whether it's in the budget or not, and to go into next year and take a look at how that looks as well. Food for thought.
yeah, that's where I was trying to get at, is if we put it back in there but didn't fund it completely at the $88,000, then we may be able to make up some of that money that it was underfunded by retirements and that sort of thing. That's what I was trying to get at without increasing the budget too much. Does that make sense? Is that clear? So at least that way we have the spot in there as a placeholder. So we know that it's on the list of things to do, finally.
I do know, the nickel and diming that we just did to get to this.
Yeah.
If we go much further, it's going to be personnel and it's going to be facilities. Because those really the only big pieces that we can even grab onto. So, I just, the 3.5, I think, we felt like, okay, we have a plan, we can do that. If we have to do much more, which I think, we can go back and look at some of these cost centers, but there's not a lot of extra stuff in this
No,
budget.
when I go through the bills, I don't see a whole lot of extra spending either. So,
No, there isn't. It's very conservative, and you have to remember the increases that we are dealing with this year. We've seen more of that than we have in the past years. I mean, we had some extra folks because we didn't need to hire them at this point in time. We held on to that. But it was always kind of a safety net in case the numbers in kindergarten or first grade came in higher. We're going to lose that safety net. But we'll take it back and see what we can do.
Are you looking for 3.5, or are you looking for that position in there? I know that if you wanted to find a compromise at 3.6, if you were to include half 0.5 FTE, you'd probably do 27.5 for library media specialist, and still remain, well, I shouldn't say still, but remain at 3.6. And then if something did...
The 3.5 goal, that comes from the Medicaid or Social Security increases, right? The cost of living, typically?
Not exactly.
That's lower than that.
Yeah, I mean, cost of living has been lower than 3.5. So.
I think what you did last year was you showed a chart of where the budget has been progressing and versus what the cost of living.
That's right. Yeah, and typically we have tracked along with it. This year we are looking higher than it, and again, I think we can expect to, probably be asked about that by our constituents, rightfully so. I understand, particularly those on fixed income. So, I think we've taken big chunks out of the initial budget, and some of them are, again, I keep coming back to it's not going away. We might have taken it out this year, but it is not going away, and at some point, it's going to have to be addressed. Anything else?
We can make a stab one more time and bring it back on the 11th.
Okay.
We will also have to do the default budget that same night, so you'll see the difference between the two.
Okay.
That would be one of the next steps I know that Jeff is interested in doing. So we'll continue the work and see how close we can get to that 3.5.
With the position as requested. So, good, very good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up.
Thank you for the administrators for all your hard work on getting to that number.
HCS renovations improvement project update.
That's me. We had a meeting of the construction committee on the 19th, last Monday, as was presented to us a few weeks ago, or last month, by the architect, Craig Jones. We're not changing the design. We've talked about that in multiple meetings. So really what the focus of this one was, we did a little bit of talking about what the efforts will be this year, who we're going to reach out to. There was a lot of talk about reaching out to town organizations and giving more information that way. And then we do have some dates. So the public hearing will be January 8th. And Dr. Wilson, if I have any of this wrong, let me know. But I think I've got it all. The deliberative is February 5th. And one other piece that we are going to do again this year, which was pretty well received last year, we did a coffee hour for seniors, which we did hold at Central School. We got some really good questions from that part of our community. So we're going to do that again this year, February 18th from 1:30 to 2:30. Other than that, voting's March 12th. So, and we are going to do a mailer, as has been done in the past, so that will go to everyone in town to give them
School tours
information.
again, also?
I think the plan is school tours again. We didn't talk directly about dates, but
Yeah, I think
Yep.
when that gets closer, we'll
Yep.
schedule some tours, make sure we publicize it. I think we've talked about this a couple of times, that some of us still occasionally hear from people that they didn't know what this was about, they didn't know what the impact was, even though these mailers go, again, to every person in town.
They didn't know they could vote for it.
So,
I know Mrs. Yusenka had put out in a meeting earlier this year, if anyone in the community has any ideas or wants to be involved with this effort, reach out to someone on the school board. We'll definitely take any help we can get. I just want to put that out there again.
Okay. Thank you. Board comments, correspondence.
I had a sustainability committee meeting yesterday and looking at ways that we can improve the environmental friendliness of our buildings, as well as perhaps the impact on the budget. There's some good things in the works. I think probably what's going to negatively impact the budget, hopefully, would be Eversource coming in and doing a test of all of our systems and seeing where we're using our energy, where we could maybe cut costs. I think the bill that I saw today was $11,000 between the two schools, to give you an idea of how much electricity costs. But yeah, there's some other things. We're talking about composting, a much better recycling program. And that's that. I think that's all I have.
Okay. Jim?
I'm all set.
I just had the construction committee meeting.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. We've got nothing else to add. So let's go to the consent agenda. Dr. Wilson.
Yes, well, considering we haven't had a lot of school in the last week, I do want to say that we did have a successful online learning Blizzard Bag Day. The first time we had no school, so we were very thrilled. Great participation, both staff and students. And then the regular snow day on the second time. So I hope this isn't going to be, visions of what's coming. But, in any event, I think everyone was ready and things went very well in terms of our online learning Blizzard Bag Day. We had a sending school district meeting last night at Pinkerton. Dr. Metzler, myself, and Jeff Dowd did attend. It was a very nice dinner. There were 3 specific students, and I don't remember their names, from Hampstead, who were cooking as part of the Chef One program. So that was very nice. They did give us some updates about the open space initiative going on there. A parent gave some donation, which is helping them with repurposing a field. So that's going to be a nice way for them to get some improved field access that they were looking for. They are looking at working with the Dairy Fire and Police on the driveway with that the new property that they purchased on Shenado Road, the Daly property. So that looks like they're going to be coming up with a plan. They don't know how much it's going to be until the engineering report is done. And that was a question that we were trying to access. How much are we talking about? Is that going to be added into the budget? They put in their budget, $750,000 have been budgeted for this, but they have no idea what the actual plan will come out being. They did talk about their enrollments along with their budget cuts. They said that there was a net of, I think, 6 positions that they are decreasing from this year in terms of their attrition. We talked a little bit about the special education programs and why the increase. They're going to get more information on that and be able to kind of let us know. There were also the strategic plan met on October 17th and the 24th. They had a great success, they said, from those 2 meetings. They had students and representatives from different communities. The 4 themes that came out of it were community, communication, better use of technology, and what they call this inside out, taking education outside, more authentic experiences for kids. So those were the 4 themes, and they have 4 groups associated with, I guess, what they call their pillars or their themes. And they're moving right along. They're going to be hoping to present some type of a finalization of the strategic plan in February and release it to all of us sometime in the spring for some feedback. So we'll hear more about that. And they had several students from ninth grade come and talk about their transition from 8th grade to ninth grade, and all were very positive about the freshman orientation experiences that they all went through and said it made a huge difference. And Emma, I don't know if you participated in that a year ago, but did you feel the same way?
Oh yeah, definitely. It was a huge help.
Yeah. They were all remarking how much it really helped them feel that they know the campus, they could get around the campus, and they made some connections. So they were all very pleased about that. There's a play going on next weekend, and we had a little skit or scenario that was done, which was very, some great talented kids that gave that scene from Little Women, which is going to be next weekend. And other than that, I don't have much others to report other than the administrators and I have been working pretty hard on trying to make some of these cuts. So we'll continue that process. We do it in a collaborative way, and I can't say enough about, the professional conversations that go on in terms of how to do this in a way that's not going to hurt kids.
Thank you for going to the Pinkerton meeting.
You're welcome.
You and the other two. I think they're all gone now, but thank you.
I'll take a motion to accept the consent.
the consent agenda.
Kathleen, is there a second?
Second.
Caitlin? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't know of any other business to come before the board. I would like,
Finance go around?
they're going around.
Okay.
I would like a brief non-public under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2L, if I could get that motion.
So moved.
Made by Ms. Parnell, seconded by Mr. Stewart.
Thank you.
Sweeney.
Sweeney. Sorry, I apologize.
Stewart.
I know, that was when I first was on the board.
Would you
Melissa.
like me to pull forward?
Yes, please.
Mrs. Abrazizi?
Yes.
Mr. Cipriano?
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
And Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Penny, there'll be no decisions.
Okay.
This is
Thank you, Jason.
informational only.